Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for attending our first webinar this year. First of a few. I don't have a solid count of how many we'll be doing this year. Our special guest today is Hannah Grisham. Hannah is an alumna of NASA's Teen Mazda Challenge. As always, before we begin, please mute your phones and computers so we can hear the presenters as clearly as possible. Now, before we get to the questions, I wanted to point out something that was really interesting to me, that at the Pirelli GT4 race at Sonoma Raceway in April, 3 Teen Mazda Challenge graduates scored victories at that event. Elliot Skier, Matt Million, and our guest, Hannah Grisham. Now, it might be an overreach to suggest that competing in Teen Mazda Challenge had anything to do with their wins at Sonoma, but I think it's perfectly appropriate to say that this is the kind of drive and motivation that you will find in racers who compete in and eventually move on from Teen Mazda Challenge. Hannah Grisham started in Southern California at the NASA region when she was 17 years old, but like many of our current Teen Mazda Challenge, she had been racing karts since she was in elementary school. Hannah won races and season championships in karting and Teen Mazda Challenge and gave us some memorable moments during her time racing with NASA in Southern California. That's probably my favorite picture of Hannah there on the left of the screen there. It's a screen grab from a video interview, and it was just the greatest thing to watch. I think if you Google her or if you search her on YouTube, you'll find that video still, if you have the interest in it. I had the privilege of watching Hannah's progress during her time in NASA, and I certainly had a lot of fun seeing her rise from amateur to professional racing to MX5 Cup, and to where she is now, driving an Aston Martin for the Heart of Racing team in Pirelli GT4 America. It gives me immense pleasure to introduce Hannah to our current crop of Teen Mazda Challenge drivers. And please note, when I asked Hannah if she'd sit down with us for a webinar with our current drivers, she jumped at it in the same way she does when she sees a green flag. So before I get started with the Q&A, I wanted to take a moment to recognize a few people on the call and thank them for sitting in with us. We got Roman Weissman, NASA's Chief Technology Officer, Lisa Caceres, Teen Mazda Challenge Series Leader for NASA NorCal. I'm sure many drivers know her well. Aldrin Villanueva, Sales and Marketing Manager for NASA. Thank you all for being here. That brings us back to our guest of honor, Hannah Grisham. Hannah, thank you again for taking part in this webinar.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to share my experiences and what I've learned.
Okay, fantastic. So if you think back to your days in Teen Mazda Challenge, what were some of the most valuable lessons you learned competing in that series that inform you as a driver to this day?
Yeah, so I think a big thing, and probably that you all have kind of heard, there's like a saying that if you can drive a Spec Miata fast, you can drive essentially kind of anything fast. I think that's pretty true because it's a momentum car. If you can figure out how to make that work and such close racing, it's going to transfer to essentially anywhere you go. But then on the other side of things, Mazda's always kind of taught to be the whole package, essentially. So they teach you a lot of business skills that you're going to need all throughout your racing career. So whether that's public speaking, networking, talking to engineers, the way you dress to the track, all that stuff is going to pay dividends. And those are all really important things that I learned in my time in Spec Miata.
Fantastic. What other kinds of cars have you driven? I'm going off my question list here a little bit, but I was curious, What are the things you've driven?
So obviously I started in karts, so various karts. And then in cars, of course, Spec Miata, MX5. I've driven a Tatis F3 car. I've driven an F2000. I've driven an Aston Martin Vantage. I've driven a Porsche Cayman GT4. I've driven a Super Trofeo. And I actually got to drive one of the vintage Mazda cars, the GTO winning, I think it's the 91 RX-7. So, or maybe it might be 81. It's 81 or 91, but very cool. So that's what I've driven.
Is that the one from their Heritage collection, the blue and white one?
Yeah.
Every time you upshift or downshift, that's awesome.
Yeah, that was a cool car to drive. Definitely difficult, but it was cool. Very cool.
Oh, neat. Now, if you can go back a bit further, how important was your karting to your experiences in Teen Mazda Challenge? We're just sort of shifting back a stage.
I mean, I definitely think it was important. I did karts for 10 years, and I mean, that's where I learned how to drive. But I don't think it's like necessarily necessary for people to do karting before they get into Spec Miata. There's people like Lonnie Unser, who I got to race against in Spec Miata, who's one of my good friends now, who I don't think she's ever really driven karts, but she's doing quite well if you look at what she's doing now. So it is definitely important. It's a good platform to kind of help you start a little higher than maybe if you had no experience, but I don't think it's absolutely necessary by any means.
Okay, I have what may seem to be a repetitive question because I think you already addressed it in a previous answer, but maybe you can take it in a different direction. What do you think of learning to race sports cars in Spec Miata?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, kind of the same thing. I feel like there will be a fair amount of repeat questions sort of in my answer, so sorry about that already.
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, Spec Miata is like, even now to this day, if anyone asks like, oh, I'm trying to get my son or daughter into racing, like where should I, what car should I buy them? I'm always like, you should buy them a Spec Miata. I mean, first of all, like money wise, there's really nothing of the affordability that it has. Also, the racing is so close, good. Again, if you can drive a momentum car fast, that'll translate to pretty much anywhere you go. And then also, I think just like the engagement and feedback and benefits that Mazda gives you is unheard of. Like no other car company really does that or brand. So I think that's huge. Mazda really cares about their grassroots, heritage, and they always have. So kudos to them.
Cool, thanks. And then what do you think the most important lesson you learned in racing Spec Miata? Let's stick to it on track. Let's not address like off track activities, but let's go with simply the racing.
Okay. So I think and where I am now, obviously driving the Aston Martin, it's a bit of a different technique than Spec Miata, which obviously every car has a different way that it likes to be driven. But I think the thing that I really have seen even from my first race in GT4 America was that I have very strong racecraft and race consistency, and I really do think that comes from Spec Miata. I just think it's such close racing. I mean, I remember racing at Coda and there was 85 cars. I mean, you definitely learn how to drive around people and be respectful, not hit them, and be competitive. I mean, it's amazing racing, and there really aren't other series like that. So that was a huge thing that I think definitely translated for me.
Yeah, that was our championships in 2018.
Yeah.
Where we have the now world famous video of all those cars going through turn 1.
9 wide into turn 1. Yeah.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
It was.
Now, if I recall correctly, you were a nominee to the MX5 Cup shootout and at least once or twice, and a finalist at the shootout at least once. Now, what are some of the things you can share with our drivers today that might help them get to the shootout? And if they do get to the shootout, maybe achieve some measure of success?
I mean, again, going back to talking with people, networking being the whole package. I think if you guys haven't already reached out to someone or are in contact with someone that in Mazda, particularly the people who are involved with the shootout, you need to be sending them emails now, introduce yourself, say who you are, what you're doing. I think, and not just in Spec Miata in this situation, but everywhere, you always want to be on the forefront of people's mind. So if there's any ever opportunity or shootout, per se, you are the first person that they think of when an opportunity arises. So I think that's a big one.
And then you have a couple times. This is a follow-up question on it, not one I had scripted, but on a couple times you've mentioned being the total package.
Yeah.
What does that entail? What does that mean?
I mean, if you go to the shootout and you win the shootout, obviously you're going to be representing a global brand. And so that takes a lot. I mean, you have to be able to, at the track, talk to maybe sponsors or people that Mazda is bringing there. You need to kind of entertain them, talk to them. Obviously, you have interview and media requirements that you need to be good at doing. You have to be strong at having debriefs and talking to your engineers. And you just have to bring kind of an overall level of professionalism to the track as well. You know, the way you present yourself, how you dress to the track, all that stuff is very important, as well as just being a fast driver. So definitely all that is important.
Okay, cool. Because you mentioned it a couple times, so I wanted to touch on that a little bit.
Yeah.
Can you think of any do's and don'ts that you should be aware of when you're either as a nominee to the shootout, as a finalist, or as an attendee, that kind of thing?
Yeah, and so I guess speaking from experience, because I've been to like a fair amount of shootouts. I've been to the finals for the Mazda shootout twice. I've gone to like a shootout or a test for W Series twice. I've done obviously the hard racing shootout. So I've had my fair share of experiences with shootouts, but big dues, again, kind of what I was just touching on. One thing I take very seriously is how I dress and like present myself at the track. I think, again, you're going to be representing a brand and you want to be a professional in the sport. So I think you need to dress like it. So always look put together, you know, wear black pants, nice shoes, a polo. I think that's very important and something that could set you aside. Let's see. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Talk to everyone. Talk to your engineers. You know, go up, shake people's hands, introduce yourself. Ask questions. Also, after, say thank you to everyone. I mean, that's something you should do regardless, but go say thank you to people. I know when I won my shootout at the Heart of Racing, obviously I've been with the team 2 years now, so we've kind of talked about it, but I went and said thank you to the people who were working on my cars, and I think I was only one of maybe 2 or 3 people, and there was 9 of us there. So it's things you might think are obvious, but I really do think it comes down to those little things that can really make the difference, especially when all of you are fast. So go the extra mile. And yeah.
I'm sorry, I think I interrupted you.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
And then don'ts. So speaking from personal experience, don't push yourself too hard, for sure. This is a car you don't know probably very well. You might be on tires you've never been on. They could potentially be a different kind of tire. Like for me, I raced on DOT approved tires and then went to a full slick. I mean, these are questions you need to ask. I, going into it, didn't really properly know how to fully warm up like a full slick tire, and that's something that definitely bit me. But yeah, I think don't push yourself too hard. You know what you're capable of. You need to kind of just trust your instincts and get into that zone and drive, and don't try to force something that might not be able to happen, because it's better to go a little bit under than the limit than to send the car off the track. So that would be a big don't for me.
You said it bit you. How did it bite you?
Yeah, so at the shootout one year, it was the last session of the day, and I was on a tire again that I didn't fully know too well and pushed the car a little too hard too early and went off track, and that ultimately took me out of the shootout. So speaking from experience, just don't do that. Take your time, get up to speed slowly. I mean, they really don't care that much about like the first session, how fast you are. Take your time, get comfortable in the car, and then, you know, slowly start pushing. So
Okay, fantastic. Now I understand you also did some endurance racing. Well, can you talk to us about the value of that kind of networking, seat time, and then of course that competition, which is different from a spec class?
for sure. So I raced in WRL for 2 years after I did the Spec Miata stuff, and it's a really cool opportunity. Definitely a different driving style because, you know, instead of a 40-minute sprint race, you're now driving a car for 8+ hours. We did 24-hour races too at Sebring. So, I mean, especially at Sebring where it takes a toll on the car, you know, you have to protect the car. You have to make sure it finishes. You know, you have to make very high percentage passes. It's more about consistency than just pushing the car as hard as you can for 40 minutes. But then also, yeah, it was a really good networking experience because it was a little bit more, I guess, of a professional paddock than, say, NASA might be. There's like high level teams from IMSA and such there. So it was a good networking opportunity and kind of bring more attention to what I was doing.
Now, where have you been able to do your most effective networking? And maybe you could speak to, this may be repetitive again, but we will make sure we cover all the issues about the value of actually being at the track.
Yeah, I mean, I think the track is the best place. Even for me in this, I feel like this kind of has to do with sponsorship a bit too. But most of like luck I had with sponsorship and networking was people at the track, like at my NASA SoCal races, just people that I would talk to and liked me, and then, wanted to help me, continue to excel in the sport. So, I'd have people pay for my shipping costs to the national races out of state, or buy me a set of tires or an entry fee or stuff like that. But I really think, like, I strongly believe this sport is kind of a people sport, and it's all about who you know and how you know them. So again, talk to as many people as you can. I know it's scary. Like, I remember going to IMSA races when I was, still trying to find a ride, and, going up and talking to people. It's the scariest thing ever, but a lot of people have been there and they understand, and they will respect you for just going up there and talking to them, because it does take a lot of courage. So, yeah.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. Now that sounds like a very busy life. Is a racing driver's work ever done?
No, I think you're constantly learning and growing. I mean, I'm for sure still learning, and I'm lucky I have some really talented teammates, so I get to learn from them. But yeah, I think everyone's trying to figure it out a bit to some degree. So yeah, the work never really stops.
So can you speak to some of the differences and similarities between racing and, Spec Miata, MX5 Cup, and then of course in the IMSA paddock? What are the similarities and differences between vastly different series like that?
Yeah, I think kind of the intensity level goes up a bit, and I guess maybe the overall professionalism is the right word. So like for me now on a race weekend, after every time I get out of the car, I have to go sit in a room in the back of the trailer with 10 other people and, talk about how the car felt and do a whole debrief. So, I mean, these are things like I didn't really do in SM, but other than like a very casual conversation. But now also you have to like talk with engineers and be able to convey what the car is doing in a concise and clear way so that they can understand and know. I think there's a lot of learning with the higher levels as well, just networking, public speaking. It all just kind of becomes more intense, I feel like is the right word. So anything you can do to practice now and make it more like the real thing and what it'll be when you get to these higher levels, I think is beneficial.
Okay. Now we're going to drill down into MX5 Cup for a bit. What are the cars like? What's the I don't know how many races you've done there, but what's the competition like? What's the atmosphere like in the paddock? Is it fun, or is it as intense as you described in IMSA?
I mean, for sure, it's still fun. Like, obviously, racing's intense, but you should still have a fun time. Like, that's why we're all here, because we love this sport. But yeah, going into MX5 Cup, you're now going to be walking into the IMSA paddock, which is like the highest level paddock you can walk into in this country. So yeah, I mean, first of all, it's a great way to have many eyes on you through your racing, but again, great networking opportunity to meet people, potential teams. Again, you want to be on the forefront of people's minds so that if they ever have an opportunity open, you're one of the first people they think of. And then in terms of like differences, it's still very competitive because, again, kind of like Brett was saying, all NASA categories, like if you look at the top 1 through 5, it's usually TMC drivers. Well, now you're going against, 25 TMC drivers. So it's kind of the best of the best, essentially. So it's very competitive. I only did 2 races in MX5 Cup, and I did it at Daytona, which was another big learning experience for me because of the draft. It's difficult because the draft at Daytona and MX5 Cup can I mean, it's 2-3 seconds in one lap just from a draft. So it's like a different level of strategy for sure, because you really have to play it smart, and that can be hard too, because that's the first race of the season. So if you're walking into that race and don't necessarily have the best idea of how to handle that, it can definitely bite you. So yeah.
Well, fantastic. So ultimately, how did you get that ride in Aston Martin with the Hard Racing team? How does something like that come together?
So yeah, it was another kind of shootout type of situation. And then ultimately, I think they had over 100 applicants. They were looking for a female driver. And then so I became one of 9 that was picked. And also I do know, because they told me that they regarded the SM stuff very highly, and that was one of the reasons they brought me. Yeah. So, woo. But yeah, so I ended up being one of the 9 picked, and then went to the shootout, and it was a 2-day shootout. Driving both days, and then we did like some media stuff. We talked to the team principal of our team, kind of had an interview, sit down situation with him, and then obviously did like data and that sort of things. But yeah, kind of the same things I was touching on earlier, like ask questions for sure. Like the engineers will love that you're asking questions, and they will definitely regard that highly. So there really aren't any stupid questions, honestly. And then also, again, thank people. Say thank you. Go up, shake their hand after, say thank you. Send them emails after, thanking them again, saying you had a great time. I mean, these are the little things that people like really won't do, and that'll take you a step further. And then again, like the way you dress. Obviously, I think I was maybe the only Spec Miata person at this shootout, but yeah, I mean, I was surprised by how not the greatest people were dressing. So all these things really do add up and make a difference. So yeah.
Yeah, that reminds me of a quote from our favorite poet, Maya Angelou, and she said, "People will never remember what you told them; they will always remember how you made them feel." And so I think the gratitude and the thanking them, speaks to that.
Yeah, and like for sure, kind of what I was saying earlier, since I've been on the team 2 years, like obviously we've talked about the shootout, and I know that was one of the things that like set me apart. Is one of the engineers said I was like one of the only people that said thank you to him. And like obviously he had a say in things as well. Everyone had a say. So I don't honestly, like I don't think I was the fastest at that shootout, but it was things like that literally made the difference of me getting the seat versus not. So I mean, keep these things in mind. Even if you're the fastest person, like you might not be the right fit for the team, or you might not have talked to people, you might have just done your own thing, and that really will make a difference.
What were some of the obstacles that you had to overcome along the way? Was there ever a moment or moments where you might have felt like quitting?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, this is a really tough sport. I think like money and finding a seat has always been a really difficult one. Honestly, before I got my seat with the Heart of Racing, I was racing in WRL, but I only had enough funding to do like 2 or 3 races. And so I only did like half of a season or a quarter of a season. I was kind of like, I think maybe this is it, my racing career is over. And then I got really lucky. But I remember like being in Spec Miata, and I would kind of look at other people like getting these really cool opportunities and stuff like that. And that sometimes frustrated me, but I think you have to know you can only kind of control yourself and what you do. And you have to kind of just trust the process and continue to put in the work no matter how hard it is, because it is really difficult. I'm not going to lie to you. So
Cool. Now, this we may have some repeat here, but what have you learned about sponsorships since making it to the professional ranks?
Yeah, so I mean, honestly, like if you look in the IMSA, the SRO paddock at all these teams, and you look at the side of their car and see who the sponsor is, either usually it's like a company, and the CEO of the company or someone that runs that company, maybe they're the son of the person who runs it, is in that car, and that's why it's on the side of the car. or it's like independently funded. So I think the whole pro-am situation nowadays is like kind of a huge key to like making it, because usually, right, there's one paying driver who might be more of a said gentleman driver, and then essentially, or sorry, an AM who's like a gentleman driver, and then you're the pro and you come on and race and they front the bill. So I think that's a huge one. But again, how do you get those rides? Not to go back to networking again, but it's kind of the same thing. Like you have to meet these people, you have to talk to them, you have to be on the forefront of their minds. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I haven't always been the best at sponsorship. It's really difficult. It's not easy at all. I found LinkedIn was a pretty good tool. And then also just people at the track, meeting people at the track. So yeah.
Okay, that seems like good information there. And you know, it is tough.
Yeah.
So, and maybe, you know, this may be a premature question because you're only 2 years into your professional racing career, but like, you know, and do you have any kind of wisdom about what it takes to sustain a professional driving career?
I mean, yeah, honestly, sorry to repeat a lot of answers, but I think it is kind of the same thing. So I had a teammate last year who essentially got kicked off, and I have a new teammate this year, but I think my situation is a little different, I guess, with my team. Like they're a very big, like, person kind of based team. If they like you as a person, they're going to give you like more of a shot. So from my experience, I really do think it is about the people side of things. I think this whole sport is so big on people, talking to people, networking with people, and I think that's really what makes the difference of making it or not. Yeah.
Okay. And can you tell us how social media played a role in your rise to the professional ranks, if it did?
I mean, honestly, I think for me personally, like it didn't play the hugest role, but obviously we've seen a lot of people who social media is the reason that they are racing at all. So obviously it has a lot of power and it can be super important. So definitely something you should utilize as much as you can.
Okay. Now you and your fellow Team Mazda Challenge alumni, Matt Million, both scored wins at Sonoma in April. And I don't recall, did you two ever race against each other in TMC?
Yeah, we did. Matt's another California person, so I actually grew up karting against Matt as well.
Oh,
Yeah, and then I believe we did race Spec Miata against each other as well. So yeah, small world, Spec Miata. There's a lot of Spec Miata people out there, honestly. So
yeah. What's that? What was that? Did you know he was going to be at Sonoma, or did you just run into him? What was that like?
I think I kind of just ran into him. I know, and like hear another story of just knowing people. I'm pretty sure Matt, I don't know for sure, but he has like worked for that team, and then that's essentially how he got his ride. So another kind of example of just talking to people, working for teams, whatever. That's how you get it. But yeah, no, I didn't know he was going to be there. And then I think I saw on the entry list that he was there. And then now we've kind of kept in touch and talked about the racing. And I've seen him, of course, at the track, and we've said hi. And yeah, it's pretty cool. Small world for sure.
Yeah, I saw that. That was neat. Now I understand you have a day job where you were at one time a test driver for Pirelli, and if I'm not mistaken, now you're a test driver for Tire Rack. Correct?
Yes.
So what?
Yeah, discount tire, but same thing.
Oh, okay. Terrible. Sorry. What is what is that like? Having that for a day job. That sounds pretty good.
Yeah. So actually I got my job through LinkedIn. I kind of just got a random email that someone had reached out to me about some position, and I just kind of responded to it, and one thing led to another. So yeah, I was a test driver for Pirelli for 3 years, and that kind of what this looks like is you go to a proving grounds and then you test things like ride, noise, steering, wet handling, and sometimes like hard handling on a tire. And then you essentially fill out a report and write your commentary, you rank things and rate them. And then you give that to an engineer. and then they essentially make tweaks to the tire based on what you say, and then they'll send something back, and that whole process kind of goes along and along until, I guess you would say, a final submission. Or in the other case, you might go and meet a company that you're making a tire for. So maybe I'll go and do a test with Tesla, and I'll ride along with their test driver, and we'll go through tires that we've made for them and essentially drive them together, talk about them, and then I'll bring the data and feedback back to the company. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting job. I got to do some pretty cool things at Pirelli. I got to do a little bit of motorsports stuff, so that was definitely probably the highlight, better than, testing a Toyota Camry. So yeah, it was exciting for sure. It's definitely a good job, and it definitely relates. It's taught me a lot about, feedback and all that kind of stuff, really just how to convey what the car is doing and how to speak that a little bit more in, like, I guess, engineer terms, for lack of a better word. So yeah, I've learned a lot by doing that.
Yeah, I often wondered which, how one, your job would serve as an aid to your job as a racing driver, and how your job as a racing driver would be.
Yeah,
helpful.
for sure. I mean, I think they both like go hand in hand, and they both kind of need each other in a way. So yeah, I've learned a lot about dynamics, and I think it's definitely something that's helped me a lot, like in the position I am now, like being able to, concisely convey what the car is doing. Like that's a big thing also when you go to a shootout or you go test with a team. They're going to want to ask you, how's the car feel? And, you need to be confident about it and say it in a way that they can understand. So, yeah.
So, what is a typical day like? What do you may have already talked about it, but walk us through a typical day in a test driver's.
In a test driver. Well, so when I'm at the track and testing, usually I'll get there, I'll kind of go to my office, get the reports kind of ready. And then essentially it'll be like a program. So it could be a 3-set tire program, or it could be a 6-set tire program. And then essentially I'll do the ride, the noise, which is like a loop on a public road. And then I'll come in, go on our oval that we have, and do like steering and like light handling stuff. And then essentially I'll stop there and then continue to do that throughout every set of tires in the program. And then the next day I'll come back and I'll do the wet handling, and then also the wet and dry braking. And then every time I come back to my office, I write my commentary and what I thought about the tire. And then essentially once I do all that, I take it home, I go through my reports, and then I send it off to whoever. So yeah, I guess that's essentially a day in the life.
No. Okay. That's really interesting. Now, what are your days like in the week, during the week and days leading up to a race? How do you prepare?
Yeah, so luckily the Hard Racing has a very nice simulator. So I always try to get on the simulator before a race, and I'll do a couple days. So I'll go in, I'll usually look at videos from the previous year. If I have already driven there, I'll watch the video, see kind of what I did wrong, look at the data. I'll usually watch the previous year race on like the live stream. I'll also usually watch my in-car live stream of the race. And then essentially once I do that, I take it, and then at the actual race, we usually have pre-session meetings. So before we go out every session, we all get together and essentially go through a run plan of what we're doing, so whether they've made changes to the car. They don't always necessarily tell us what the changes are, but usually they'll tell us if they made a change, who's starting in the car, what kind of tires we're on, all those sort of things. And then we'll go out, obviously drive. At times we'll make changes on the pit lane. So usually if like, say I'm really struggling in the car, it's better for me to just call on the radio immediately right then and say, I'm struggling with like massive amount of, brake release oversteer, whatever it is. And then a lot of times we'll come in the pit lane, make a change during practice. So then after getting out of the car, usually we all go back again to the room and we'll have a debrief, kind of like I was talking about earlier. We'll talk about, how the car felt, if we're struggling, just all those sort of things, how the whole session went for us. And then usually after that, it then goes to looking at data and video, which usually I do with one of my teammates who also races in IMSA and whatnot. And we'll look through our data, our video, think about it, and then kind of rinse and repeat that process over and over a bit. So, yeah.
And then walk us through a typical race weekend at SRO. When you get to the show, what happens?
Kind of the same thing. You have your pre-session and then you go on grid. In SRO, it changes who starts every day. So one race I'll start and then the other race my teammate starts. You definitely kind of like to have an idea of who you're around, because since it is more of a pro-am series, you could either be against people who are like IMSA veterans and very good drivers, or you could be around maybe someone who doesn't have the most experience. So it's always good to know who you're competing against, because you don't want to, expect somebody to do something and they just completely don't do that, which is another kind of good, I guess, lesson that I've also had to learn, in competing in the series, is you kind of do have to, in a way, expect the worst out of people. You can't expect them to do what you think they're gonna do or should do, because a lot of times they will not do that, and potentially that can lead to you hitting them or something like that. So yeah, just things that you have to learn. But yeah, and then obviously usually there's the race. We have a pit stop in our races, so that was also something I had never done until racing in this series, was coming in and trying to do a pit stop as quickly as possible. And since we don't refuel or change tires or anything, it's essentially you're trying to get out and in as quickly as possible. So, which usually leads to just be calm, don't get worked up, just kind of go slower is usually better than overthinking things and rushing. And then, yeah, I mean, that's kind of, I guess, really the main part of the race. So, yeah.
And what's it like racing in front of an audience? Fans, coming.
I wouldn't say it's
Willow, and now you're racing at Sonoma with fans and TV and all that stuff. What's that?
I wouldn't really say it's different. I mean, obviously when you're driving, you're not thinking about those things, or in the zone and your rhythm. So it really doesn't bother me, I guess, or have any effect on me personally at all. So I guess it might for some people, but it is a little different having autograph signings. Yeah, for sure. Coming from Spec Miata, where, it's my parents watching me, and then now there's actually people. So it's a little different, but yeah.
Do you have a favorite story from an autograph signing?
Well, yeah, I guess kind of. My first, well, I have one where my sister tried to embarrass me a bit, so that was good. But yeah, it was my first race in the series, and had all my teammates, and my sister had one of her friends come up to me and pretend to be a super fan, essentially, of me. And I've never met this person, but it was definitely a little awkward, but it was fine. It was funny.
Good. Well, that's now my favorite autograph signing story. So I have probably asked enough questions at this point, but so I would like to open the discussion to see if any of our current TMC drivers would like to ask Hannah a question. If you do, just click the little hand icon at the bottom of the screen, and we'll take them one at a time. Okay. Go ahead, William.
Where did you find all of the people that at the SoCal NASA races? You said you were networking with a few people. Where did you go to just find everybody?
I mean, so when I was racing in NASA SoCal, Robert Davis, who he's no longer involved in Spec Miata, but he's an old Mazda person. And then also there was Mothers at the time, the Mothers brothers. So I literally walked up to them one day and sat down with them and asked to talk. And asked if I could like be a part of their team essentially. And that was one example. And yeah, of course that was super scary, but I literally just walked up and talked to them. And then some, I just had people who would like say hi, and then you get into a conversation with them. So I had a guy he raced in a different class, I think in the 944s or something, that ended up paying for like some of my entry fees. I mean, it's just stuff like that, like literally at the drivers' meetings, if you just get in a conversation with someone, I mean, you never know. So just be open about it. I guess talk to everyone, because that's really how it works.
I'm curious, who was the 944 guy?
Charles
Sharp?
Bazzetti?
Oh, Bazzetti.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Did you have a follow-up?
No.
Okay.
I mean, also like a good one is this, I guess isn't necessarily the same, but like if you guys are close to any of like the MX5 Cup races, definitely a good place to go and, you know, talk to teams. Just walk up to them, say hi, tell them you're racing Spec Miata. They'll talk to you. Go introduce yourself to the people. Like I think Applegate is still there. I mean, you literally just have to walk up to these people. Again, I know it's scary, but just walk up to them, say hi, who you are, what you're doing, and trust me, they will appreciate it and they understand.
Okay. Hayden Manis.
Yeah, I noticed you mentioned LinkedIn. I've been kind of like dabbling into it. I haven't quite figured out what I'm going to do with it, but have you been posting on it? Have you been using it for like contact info? How have you been using it?
Yeah, kind of both. So I don't post on it as much as I used to, but I used to like post racing stuff. And then also I would just try to connect with like as many people as I could, maybe people that I thought like were potentially good sponsors. So usually I'd look for like, obviously like marketing people at certain companies. So, and then usually I just send them a message. Obviously a lot of people don't reply, but some do, and some will like kind of talk with you and respond with you. And I actually through LinkedIn went and like met with the chief marketing officer of like Komatsu and went to their demo site and everything. So it can work, but it does take like a lot of time to like weed through people, message people, and do that sort of thing. So time consuming, but it does have potential to work.
So kind of a follow-up question to that.
Yeah.
When you do reach out to people, do you just kind of explain who you are and introduce yourself, or do you basically propose the idea of a sponsorship?
So usually I would wait till like first of all they connected with you, because some people, if I remember correctly, like you can't even connect with really, or you can't message them unless they connect with you. But then yeah, essentially I would never at first like talk about sponsorship or anything like that. I would essentially just say like, hey, thanks for connecting, like, and usually I'd ask them a question or something about like what they did, like, oh, what exactly do you do for this company? Or I would try to like not make it about sponsorship or I guess like me in a way. It would just be kind of like an open-ended question, like, oh, would love to know like what you do at said company, or some sort of open-ended question like that, I think is the best way to go about it. And then obviously once you get them talking or responding to you, then that's when you kind of are like, oh, I do this and blah, blah, blah. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good open. So it's how do you get girls, Hayden? You ask them questions about themselves, right?
Something like that.
Okay, so if nobody else has any questions, we will come in under an hour, and we will do so easily. So, Hannah, let me begin by thanking you again for coming. We couldn't have done it without you. I'm one of your biggest fans. I know your mom and dad are your biggest fans, but I'm right behind them. So we're all going to be pulling for you in IMSA this year. So go ahead, have as much fun as you possibly can, and go as fast as you can, and score some more wins, because we're all going to be watching. We're all going to be rooting for you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.